Welcome to another episode of Me and the Road. As I'm recording this, today's December 29. 2021 is winding down just in a couple days. I can't believe it. Still kind of a challenging year. Some great things happened this year, but still pretty challenging with the pandemic and all. But today I wanted to focus on the year 1993 road trip I did with Michael McDonald. In particular, most of it was when we went to Europe, to the UK, to the United Kingdom, and to, Germany, Sweden. I'm sure I'll think of more. I've got some notes down here to follow. But the first, I'd like to start off by saying that this year, the band did a kind of a lineup change. The lineup at this time was myself, Chuck Sabatino on keyboards and vocals, Chaz Frictel, Vince Denham on sax and keys, and George Pirelli on drums, and of course Michael. It was notable because up to this point, we had a great keyboard player, Tim Heinz, who is a remarkable writer, producer, keyboardist. But he was going on to do other things, pursuing his own ventures, producing and writing other people. So Chuck, we instead of looking for a replacement, Mike and Chuck, I guess, discussed it, and we thought we could pare the band down one member, and Chuck would learn a lot of the keyboard parts that Tim did, like horn parts that he doubled with Vince. And so that's what we did. And Chuck did just a tremendous job. You'll see some of the videos you can look up. In particular, one I'll mention later is the Jay Leno show, Higher Ground. But anyway, we rehearsed the band in this new lineup and went off to Europe. First place I'll cover is Germany. We went to Germany. We did a few shows in Germany, one in Berlin, one in Hamburg. And then this other gig, we were supposed to do a television show. And it was Baden-Baden. That's what it was. Took me a minute. Came back to me. I couldn't remember it, and it came back. Which was like a tremendously long drive from, I think we were staying in Hamburg or Frankfurt or one of those. And we took a little bus out there and drove for, it seemed like, had to be 2-3 hours at least. It was a long drive and out in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful country. I was kind of amazed at how beautiful Germany was. I never pictured it that way, but it's just a gorgeous country. Anyway, out in the boonies somewhere out to Baden-Baden, we get to this little town, beautiful little town, and there was a television studio out there. And it was for the show called Untitled, probably not pronouncing that right, but I think I'll show a clip here in this video. But we did our full show, like an hour and a half show. Probably was about closer to an hour. And great audience out there. We played live, did a straight through with the live audience. It was great. You don't get to do that kind of live concert stuff that much on television, but we did on this day. And what is really memorable to me is, first off, before we did the show, before we played, of all people, James Taylor was there in the backstage area, kind of like the green room or the common area where people hang out before they do the show. And James Taylor, for crying out loud. And of course, he and Mike knew each other, but he came and hung with us, and we talked. And he was going to tape, I believe, after us for another show. So that was just remarkable right there in itself. Meeting and hanging with James Taylor, couldn't have been a nicer guy. Just down to earth, super nice guy. Then we did the show, and as we were playing, a lot of times I don't really, when I'm playing, I'm thinking of the music, but a lot of times I'll look around and check out the crowd and just kind of take it all in. And I noticed there was somebody standing in the back that looked really familiar to me. And remember, we're in Baden-Baden, not in the middle of nowhere. And I look back there and it's this guy leaning against the wall, and I'm like, man, if that's not Mario Cipollina's double, like I was thinking in my head at this moment, that thing they say about your double is somewhere in the world. There's someone that looks just like you. Well, I went, that's Mario Cipollina. Now, Mario Cipollina, who, for those who don't know, was the bass player of Huey Lewis and the News. And I was actually good friends with those guys, and I knew Mario really well. But I was just like, oh my gosh, that guy looks like Mario Cipollina. So we continued on with the show. It's a good show. And then we're stepping off the stage, and as I step off, there's somebody it's Bill Gibson, the drummer of Huey Lewis and the News. And I'm like, oh my goodness. He's like, hey, Bernie, man, you sounded great. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And they were there doing a show with Bill Champlain. I'm sure a lot of you know who Bill Champlain is, but if you don't, he headed a band called the Sons of Champlain. They were out of the Bay Area, Marin County in particular, where I'm from. And I was huge fans of those guys. Bill Gibson and Mario Cipollina they're backing up Bill Champlain for the same show that we were doing, but another day, of course. They'll be taping for another show. And I don't remember who the fourth musician was with them. Anyway, Bill Champlain was backstage, so we hung out with him. And I didn't really know Bill Champlain, but I told him how much I admired him, and he remembered my band Logos from Marin County. We played with them a couple times, and he was super nice too. So what are the odds of seeing these guys so far out in the boonies? It was, shouldn't say boonies, but you know what I mean. So that's what was memorable about that show. You can catch the show, if you look up Michael McDonald on One Filter, you'll find it. You can watch the whole show. It's pretty good. It's right around the blink of an eye era. As a matter of fact, I think we do blink of an eye in that show. Anyway, let's see. I'm going to look at my notes so I get this all correct. So another cool thing in Germany is we played in Hamburg, which, if you know anything about the Beatles, that was a key city for them, where they kind of developed their act and played just night after night, hour after hour in a club called the Star Club there. So here we were in Hamburg, and of course the Beatle nut that I am was very aware of where we were, and we were playing a club called Großfreiheit. I apologize to anybody over in Europe or Germans that I'm butchering the pronunciation of these names, but it's Großfreiheit, and was the club. And somebody there that worked there or something said, this is the location of the Star Club. It was downstairs. It's where the Beatles used to play. And we're like, oh, come on. So all of us, everybody in the band were Beatle nuts. Michael, Chuck, me, Chaz, George Perilli. Vince maybe not as much because he's more of a jazz background, but the rest of us were just like, oh, come on. So they took us downstairs into this room. It was the Star Club. And now it's like it was at this time in 1993, it was like a club, dance club maybe. And our friend, our keyboard tech, Ed Simeon, took a picture of all of us sitting on the, which you'll see the picture, I'll superimpose it, of us sitting in the Star Club. So that's a picture that I really treasure. I've got it here on my desk right now. And I know Mike's got one, and I know Chaz and George Chuck, of course, has left us in 1996, but he treasured that photo as well. And what a memorable time we had. There's other stories about Germany, but I'll go into those later. Well, okay. Never mind. I think I'm just going to move on. Anyway, Germany was unbelievable. The audiences were just so enthusiastic and so with us, which is pretty general in Europe. Audiences are just so enthusiastic over there. They love Michael. I think they love American R&B, soul, rock soul. You know, they just really embraced Michael and the band. And so anyway, so further on we went to Stockholm and played a club called Cafe Opera. And this is also on YouTube. You can look that up, Michael McDonald at Cafe Opera, Stockholm, Sweden. And beautiful little Cafe Opera kind of describes the place really well. It was very ornate, very beautiful inside. A club, but a concert club. And I remember we were there for sound check, and at the time Mike had a different manager. And that manager, I think, also managed Jeff Lynne, and he still does to this day. So there was a McCartney connection there. So Mike's manager told him, McCartney was playing in Stockholm that same night. And the word was that Paul and the band were going to come see us that night. So we were like, oh my goodness. So we were pretty nervous, and but excited. We did a great show, and I kept thinking, Paul might be out there watching us, and I thought, oh, I'm going to meet Paul. And anyway, we did the show. We found out after the show that Paul, being that he has a home in Scotland, amongst the few that he has, or more than a few, but sometimes he decides to get on his plane and go home and spend the night at home instead of a hotel, which, why I can relate to that. I would do the same. But, so Paul didn't make the show, unfortunately, but his band did. So that night, Robbie McIntosh, Wixon, the keyboard player, Robbie, the guitar player. I don't know if Hamish Stewart was there that night, but the drummer was, and I'm blanking on his name. But anyway, they came and hung out with us, and we did a serious hang afterwards. I think we went to a club somewhere, or maybe there was a nice backroom stage area at Cafe Opera. I can't quite remember, but we hung out together and had a great time. I mean, it was a good 2-3 hour hang. And I remember talking to Robbie about guitars and amps and sounds and songwriting. What a fun night that was. So in a related story, maybe a year later, maybe not quite that long, McCartney was playing in Los Angeles when I was still living in LA. And yeah, I'm trying to remember the timeline on this. But anyway, because we had met them in Europe, we somehow got backstage passes to the McCartney show. We didn't get backstage passes, so we didn't meet Paul again. But the band saw us and said, oh, hey, you guys, how you doing? We hung out with them for a while, so that was cool. So anyway, that was, let me see if I got any more notes here. Give me a second. Take a look here. Hold on. Yeah, Stockholm. Okay, so that was, those were the highlights of that tour. The band was so tight. Chuck, we were also proud of Chuck because he had learned these parts of Tim's and incorporated them into the band. So we were now the 6-piece band that were just kicking ass. We really, and the vocal blend that Chuck, Chaz, and myself had, to this day is probably my favorite. I mean, I'm really fond of all the band members I've played with in Mike's band over the years. And in particular, the present band, if we ever go back out again, with Dan Needham and Jacob Lowry, Mark Dalvett, Pat Coyle, Drea, Renee. I love this band. But this particular band, back in '93, there was a real brotherhood. We really, really were tight. And the vocal blend was tight. There was a synchronicity of that band that I still love to this day. And there's the great thing about it, it's well documented. Another great performance, one of my favorite performances, another one you can look up, or you can just go to my website and go to my video page. But it's when we did the Jay Leno show at the end of 1993. It was New Year's Eve, as a matter of fact. And we did Higher Ground, Stevie Wonder's tune. And we had a great arrangement of it. We recorded it around the time of Take It to Heart. And it was a single. I don't think it made it on any album, although later it came out on the Ultimate collection on Rhino Records. But we just had a monstrous arrangement of it. It was very, I know the Red Hot Chili Peppers came out with a single of Higher Ground around the same time, and I always thought ours was, sorry, but far superior. But it was never released as a single, really. I think it was a B-side to one of the songs. I can't remember. Maybe it was the B-side to Take It to Heart. You guys know better than I do. But we did Higher Ground on Jay Leno that night, and we just killed. And I connected that night. The band connected. I think it's one of my better guitar performances on a live TV show, and I really, really adore that performance. Chuck singing on it with Mike is just tremendous. The drumming, the vocals we did together, the background vocals, we were on that night. And I remember Jay Leno, which I think he used to do for a lot of his acts, I think, because he did the same. I did the Doobie Brothers. I played with the Doobie Brothers in 1995, a couple of years after this. And Jay did the same thing, but on this particular show, he's off camera, but he comes up to the band and like gets on the side and really gets into it. And he's like egging you on, like, come on, man, let's rock it. You guys are fantastic. I mean, Jay was a tremendously nice guy. I've done that show maybe 2 or 3 times when Jay Leno was the host. And he was always so warm and welcoming. He'd come up to the dressing room, to the band, and make sure we had everything we needed, got his T-shirts. He was just sweetest guy, very approachable, normal. You know, the Jay Leno you see, that's Jay Leno. Anyway, so we took out 1993 with doing the Tonight Show. Unfortunately and sadly, to this day, it makes me very sad to think about it. That was Chuck's last performance, Chuck Sabatino's last performance that I played with him. I think it might have been Mike's as well. Him and Mike were going to do a private show in Spain, I think it was, somewhere. I think it was Spain. I might have that wrong, but it was somewhere in Europe. And on the way to the airport, Chuck started not feeling very well. And to the point where he felt like he was going to black out. And to my recollection, they took him to the hospital, and I think they sent him home saying that he was okay. And when he went home, he suffered a stroke. And unfortunately, it was a bad one. Chuck never recovered fully, or never really recovered from it. He was, it progressively got worse. And he never spoke again. As a matter of fact, he never walked again. He was pretty much bedridden for the next 2 years. I'm sorry to end on such a downer, but it was a very heavy time for us to lose Chuck like this. He lived for 2 years and died on his birthday in February of 1996. Just a very sad occurrence. I mean, Mike and Chuck were friends from since they were teenagers, I believe, young teenagers, and played in bands together. And when Mike moved out to California, not too many years after that, Chuck came out and Mike incorporated him in a solo band. It was right after he left the Doobie Brothers. So him and Chuck were like this. And I'm proud to say that I became a really good friend of Chuck's too. We bonded. We started writing songs together. Wrote a great song called "When It Comes to Love" that I still think could have been a hit for Johnny Mathis or someone like that. Just a really cool song. I think I posted it on Patreon. Maybe I'll repost it so you can check it out again. But and Chuck singing the lead. Chuck was a great singer, great guy. He was kind of a real spiritual center for the band at that time. So when we lost him, it took us a while to kind of find a balance again. It really did. We had a couple great people that came in and played keyboards, but it just never. And we weren't trying to make it like, there was no way you could match what Chuck did. Anyway, like I said, I was proud to call Chuck my friend. And it was a real devastating blow to lose him. But anyway, that's what made 93 so memorable to me, because the band got so tight. We were so on it. And then this, the end of the year, this happened with Chuck. So certainly a memorable year. But I think that's all I was going to cover on this one. 1993 on the road. And I know there's more that I probably could remember about this, and maybe I'll do a part 2 to this one, because it was a memorable year. I think we also went to Japan in 93. As a matter of fact, I know we did, because my son was born in 93, and I remember it might have been December of 93 we went to Japan after this European tour, before we did Jay Leno, because I remember missing my little baby boy when I went over to Japan terribly. So I think it was 93. So it was a busy year, and Mike had released Blink of an Eye. We had I Stand For You was the single, I think, was the main single off that song, which I was honored to play on that as well. But I know I could think of more, and I'm thinking more. I don't want to mix and match the stories too much, but I think I'll leave it at that. And I want also to take this opportunity to thank you all for the continued support and hanging in there and checking out what I do. I have Michael to thank for putting me in the spotlight, so I'm able to have fans or people that are interested in what I do. I do have a lot of music to offer, and I like to share it. So I'm glad you guys are interested, and I sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this little fan group, or it's not even a fan group, it's more of a interest group, I guess, maybe, in music and whatever. But anyway, and for those of you who are seeing this on YouTube, I'm referring to Patreon. It's patreon.com. It's a little membership where people pay $1 or $3 a month, or whatever they choose. And I share stuff that I don't normally share on social media, or the making of my records, or things that I've done that might be of interest to people. I hear my dog barking out there. But anyway, thanks again, and I'm wishing you all a much better 2022. Let's hope we get past this stupid friggin' pandemic and get back to getting out there and being together again and playing music and all that good stuff, where we don't have to be afraid of getting sick or making someone else sick. Okay? And thanks for tuning in for another episode of Me on the Road. I've got a few more ideas for some neat stories, including the making of No Love to Be Found and Someday You Will, which we wrote in the same day, Mike and I. That's got a cool backstory to it as well. But anyway, that's it. Peace, love, and stay safe, everybody. Happy New Year. Bye-bye. Thank you.